Welcome to another episode of Uncommon Voices, Uncommon Visions. I'm your host, Dr. Valerie Nyberg, and I'm so excited to have LaTasha DeLoach with me on my episode today. LaTasha has a BSW and LMSW from the University of Iowa. She is currently the Iowa City Senior Center Coordinator. Before that, she worked for the Johnson County Social Services Department as a county project specialist, lots of syllables there, for 10
Yes.
years. And in that role, she was the Johnson County Disproportionate Minority Contact Coordinator, which is how we actually met, and the Community Partnership for Protecting Children Coordinator.
hmm
She also started the Juneteenth event in Iowa City and created programs such as My Beautiful Self, Our Beautiful Selves, Mother Daughter Luncheon, and Kids for Kites. Um,
Cool.
yep. She also was on the school board for the Iowa City Community School District and was the first African American woman to serve in that capacity in over 30 years. She started as Girls Circle Association facilitator and was a co-founder of G World, which served self-defined minority girls at the secondary level through the Iowa City area. And if that's not enough, she is the proud mama of two twins, a boy and a girl.
Yes. Yes.
You
Yes.
keep busy.
Whoo, child. It's nothing like an introduction to make you go, did I do all that? Whew, I need to
Right.
sit down.
And that's not even everything. That's the
It-
highlights.
true. It definitely are some additional pieces there for sure. For sure.
Absolutely. So, who is LaTasha DeLoach and how has she worked throughout her life to find and define who she is?
Well, third person me. I
Right.
would say I am a kaleidoscope of myself, right? Like I have the very advocacy part of who I am, right? Where I'm doing that work, whether it's Black maternal health and or working to create spaces for Black women and women of color to have social spaces are working obviously with young Black girls, self-defined minority girls who specifically are feeling detached, right? So I have that advocacy self, and
Mhm.
then I have my work that I'm doing now as a senior center director, where I'm specifically working to basically update what age looks like on that kind of deeper end.
What do you mean?
um
What do you mean by that?
so I really believe that in my current role, the people who were running the facility that I run now, they had more of a um, anti-ageism, and so a lot of things were deeply rooted in language about like we're not going to take this kind of you guys treating us different because we're older, and I really have had to reconstruct that for my staff and for the community to say, yeah, getting older is beautiful though. And that it is something that we should celebrate. That is not something, you know,
So what
that we
I'm
should be like, no, no, no.
Right. So what I'm hearing is you shifted the focus from more of that deficit. I'm
Yes.
losing something as I'm getting older to more self-empowerment as I'm getting older.
Yes.
And then leaning into the kinds of things that means and the kinds of shifts and pivots that requires.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So our big thing there is stay active, stay curious, and stay connected, right? Like that's
Nice.
our stay, right? We call it that because it's like we want you keep learning. We believe in lifelong learning.
Mhm.
So that's more on the advocacy side, as well as I'm well known throughout the state for my work, specifically looking at disparities in youth serving institutions, whether that's in schools, whether that's in juvenile justice. I still do quite a bit of work on the juvenile justice and trying to advocate for youth who are caught in that system, trying to close gateways into that system, whether that's from kids who are crossing over from the DHS side into the juvenile justice side.
Mhm.
So that's the advocacy me, right? Like, so I'm doing advocacy across ages and across race and ethnicity, etc. And then there is like, I have this whole musician side of me, right? That's Lala, right? And even within Lala, she is like a kaleidoscope, right? There's rock la la, there's like soul la la. I call one of my versions when I get a little sexy with my groove, I call her La Lizzle. Not Lizzo, but Lizzle.
Well, yeah.
Like sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. And so I'm enjoying that. And I'm also fighting empowerment and also fighting some advocacy, even in that music side, right? So I'm trying to put together a benefit concert specifically to uplift the voices and the arts of kids who are performing artists, whether they're rappers or they're singers, whatever. So I'm
Mhm.
doing some work on that end and really enjoying that work. And I'm a songwriter, so doing some writing some songs for others. Finding that musical community has been a thing, but I need that part of myself because I do so much of this very external advocacy piece, and like the la la part of me is self-care, it's
Mm.
self-love, it's my form of justice for myself. It allows me to use my voice differently. And then of course I'm a mother, right? I'm a mother, I'm a community member. Momming is hard out in these streets. I'm a single mom. I don't know sometimes if I'm parenting my children or if they're parenting me, so that's a conundrum sometimes.
I
But
think it is a
really,
two-way
really
street.
enjoying it is.
It is.
I,
I
I
think
learned things. Yeah.
right. That's exactly what I was gonna say, because I was a single parent, and I definitely had to learn, like, for as a only child and having 3 kids,
Yeah.
that
Yeah. That's
sibling
different.
dynamics is just like something I had to learn. So I was always learning and trying to pivot and change as my kids got
Yes.
older. And they require
Yes.
different things from you.
Exactly.
Right.
And it really kind of messes with your mind because we're having twins, my kids are literally 60 seconds apart. Okay, 60. One was born at 10:59, one was born at 11. Okay. So it's like two babies. And but they're very unique
Uh-huh.
individuals. They like similar things because they're at the same age where they would like similar things. But even in that, there's things that they like separately.
Right.
But I remember early on when I was parenting, I was tired, so I just want everybody's wearing pink today. Everybody's wearing blue. Okay, like everything is the same, and I made some mistakes along the way, right? Like I had my daughter had potty trained in like 2 weeks, but her brother was dragging along, and I just kept, doing the same thing, and so then she kind of reverted back, and I was like, dang, but I didn't have the energy to
Yes.
give her what she needed to support her where she was. And so I just didn't. But I mean, they're both potty trained. Obviously, they're 8, but still, like, I just remember going, dang, they are two different people. And look at how I kind of, because I was too tired to really invest in them separately, she would be so much further along. But it all worked out. It all
Yeah.
worked out.
I think
Yeah.
that investment key that investment, that notion of investment, I think, is definitely one of the key parts of my work and my parenting and my approach.
Hmm.
Because, like,
Hmm.
if you don't look at it as an investment, then there's a lot of things that you don't see.
Yeah.
And you can't see, because, like, if you're investing something, then you're paying attention to what it's doing and how it's growing and changing, or not. Just like you would your money with the person, you do those same things and you look for those clues. I don't think that enough people understand that, particularly in education, of the investment part of it,
Yes.
and how that
Yes.
investment isn't it's not a property right. It's not, I'm doing this for you, but it's like, I'm helping to invest in you so that
Hmm.
you can grow and develop and do other things that I never even thought of, for you. So I really like that you said investment.
Yeah. I mean, like with all investments, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down.
Right. Right.
So you kind of got to do a little bit of both.
Mhm.
And you got to hope that in the end it all shakes out and you get your money's worth plus
Right.
more.
And if you don't, you've got to take that as a lesson and move
Yeah.
forward. And
Yeah.
that's the other thing, I think, that if things don't turn out the way we want them to, we often get so wrapped up in that disappointment and anxiety
Hmm.
about the disappointment and what it means, that we don't go forward, and
Yeah.
we don't allow that individual, or whether it's our child, whether it's a student, whether it's a senior,
Hmm.
that individual to grow into that next step either, because we're so busy holding on to
Yeah.
what we thought we wanted, which who's to say it had to happen that way.
Right. Right. And one thing about parenting and even thinking about it from even the education standpoint, adjunct, there's places where you give your investment space,
Mhm.
right? You go, you take that deep breath. You're like, let's see how it's, what's going to happen here. And sometimes there's some natural consequences in there, and it's like, okay, like you said earlier, lesson learned, and you keep on moving. So
Right.
yes, but it's a ride. It's a ride. I enjoy my life. I schedule joy sometimes. I'm on my joy journey, but like sometimes you have to schedule it because your schedule gets kind of full, and but it's really important to do that for yourself. Got to survive out in these streets, motherhooding it, working, all the things, having fun.
Absolutely. So you used to run some youth programs, which I mentioned earlier.
Yes.
What
Hmm.
inspired that work? You talked about advocacy. What else was
Um, Well, I grew up in a home where my parents were racial justice folks.
hmm
And so we lived in this little small town in northern Iowa when we first moved here.
That's right.
And yeah, I lived in, yeah. And I watched my parents do a lot of work on racial justice. Like they really were like in newspapers and constantly at meetings and different things because they believe that we all should have like this opportunity to all live as community members and live our lives without all this, racism and, all the standard fare, I would call it, all the isms.
Right.
And but they were very much racial justice focused because that was the biggest thing. And so I watched, my dad had this more of, I'm going to hammer the nail. My mom had this, I'm going to try to dress the nail up and see if we can encourage it to eventually come out of the wood. And my dad was like, we're going to beat the nail down to the point where you can't see it anymore. So I was like, it was kind of interesting watching those two viewpoints of how things went. And then when I went to school, unfortunately, while they were doing this like much larger community perspective work on racial justice, I was going to school with some of the same children that the people that they were working against went to school. And so over time, I remember the first time I really did real racial justice work was my high school year, before I moved down to where I live now. And I remember there was this kid in my class. I think his name was Christian, which really was messing with my head. Um, Anytime we took a break to go to the water fountain, if I got to the water fountain before him, he would go down to the water fountain on the other end of the school. And now this is a historic high school, so the hallways are long. So I'm
Right.
like, you walked all the way down there versus just getting some water right here. And he would do things like if he was the person passing out all the calculators, he would pass out calculators to everyone except me. So over time, I was just like, am I imagining this? Or like, you start tracking, like, am I tweaking? Or is this kid either got a problem with me? But he couldn't have my thing was like, he couldn't have a personal problem with me because we've never had a conversation.
Right.
And so then someone was like, well, he kind of comes from a family where, they don't really, I was like, oh, in the 90s, we do that? That's what I was saying in the 90s. Now it's 2022. And I'm going,
Right.
in
Right.
2022, we do that?
We still have that.
We still got that problem. God, who knew I would be saying that every year for the rest of my life.
Right.
And so I started this, we called it a rainbow committee because it was kind of a play off of the Rainbow Coalition, that was happening with Reverend Jesse Jackson. So we structured this, we pulled some kids together, we talked about the different things, right? Like that we wanted to be supportive of that. And I was working with a guidance counselor, which is so funny because she's now the principal of that high school. And I called her and I talked to her a couple years back. And then I ended up moving, and the next year the committee got a award. They got a state award for their work. I'm like, that was my original work, you know. But I felt disappointed, but I felt proud. I got to be a part of that work, and so yeah. But that's kind of where some of my advocacy came from, and then some of it just kind of came down to like being a natural born leader in some ways and just having a voice and being raised that it's okay to lift up my voice if others around me can't.
Mhm.
And so that just kind of started me down this road. And I went to college originally to do business, but I just kind of got snatched up by social work classes and ran into a black social work woman who had never met a black social work woman professor.
Mhm.
And she was like, I think you need to be over here. And I was like, well, it wasn't no other businesses or no other classes of professors, tried to, so it was just that small intervention of being like, I think you could be great at this,
Mhm.
like changed the entire trajectory of my life. And so, and after that, it's just been advocating for youth. And I've been here a long time. So I know how school systems are. And as that went on, I got a little burnt out with doing some of that work because it's hard when it's like just you in the room constantly as a black woman. And went to even more white world with going into aging. I don't know what I was thinking, but I was definitely thinking that I needed a change. And I was had done so much community level, or in social work we would say meso level work and macro level work as well.
Mhm.
That I was ready to I was okay with being an administrator for a while, right? Because I had sat under administrators, and I'm like, I think there's a different approach and different way we can do this, and so did that, and so that's what I'm doing now. And we're infusing fun. We're infusing more diversity work. We have a equity plan that we're about to implement, and my hope is to start working on that inclusion plan. But I had to do some work to prepare the people who are currently there for the people who will come, and
Right.
so it's all a part of that advocacy work for sure.
So, from your programs and from the experiences you've had, what are some of the impacts you've seen, and what has been your passion for guiding specifically minority young ladies?
Mm. So some successes are definitely Juneteenth, working with Club Kazi and starting the commemoration of Juneteenth in our community because there was none.
Yeah,
And now it's a federal holiday, but it wasn't back in the
right.
day. And the struggle bus was real,
Right.
to the point where now it's an actual national holiday. But that was after I had did it for 9 years. It was 11 years in this town before it ever became a national holiday, and that's not even including all the 150 years before everybody else plus
Sweetheart,
who's
as
been
you know,
doing it.
I didn't even know about Juneteenth before I was on Club Kazi, and I was like, "What?"
Me either.
Right.
Me either. So it was a learning, for all
Right.
of us. And to just bring that about has been was a really amazing to be a part of. It was frustrating because there were so many people who didn't know what it was. And so I spent a lot of time educating people. I spent a lot of time begging and pleading with people to, can I have $50? Can I have $100? I mean, I did a lot of that work to make that happen. But that was a huge thing. And, Kites for Kids is one of probably also a really powerful program that I created, because that was about child abuse prevention, right? So we for child abuse nationally, the symbol for child abuse is a pinwheel.
Mhm.
So what I did with Kites for Kids was I just like, let's do all things that fly that we have access to.
Mhm.
And so it became a kites festival, but we always included bubbles, and we had pinwheels everywhere, right? The little kids had a pinwheels. One year we had a helicopter come, and the kids got to climb through the helicopter. They landed in the park, and the kids got to climb through the helicopter. I mean, like, I just went all out, right? At this point, there's 3 Kites for Kids festivals that happen every year here around the same time in the month of April, which is Child Abuse Prevention Month. And so proud of that. I think the single, if I wanted to look at my advocacy outside of those things, which are very powerful, was going to Congress and talking with our delegation,
Mhm.
specifically about the need for the reauthorization of the Juvenile Justice Delinquency Prevention Act.
Mhm.
It hadn't been reauthorized 18 and 16 to 20 years or something.
Mhm.
And that allowed federal funding to come down to states to be able to do more work to try to prevent kids from going into the juvenile justice system. And so going and having to kind of talk with our folks, a lot of our folks were in agreement, but I was like, I appreciate that you agree, but I need you to do something about it.
Right.
And going down and actually talking to one of our representatives who just so happened to be the chair of the committee that specifically was doing that work, and being able to talk to him and say, this is really a big deal. We do need that to happen. One of the hardest ones that I had was one of the representatives was Steve King. And me and him kind of got into a little back and forth. I remember walking out of his office, and the last thing I said, he said, LaTasha, me and you, we probably could talk about this all day. I said, Representative King, you are not ready. And I just walked out the door, and everybody, I didn't even realize I said it. And then, like, everybody that was in the lobby, because the door was open when I said it, I was walking out and I said it, and everybody, and the people I went, they were like, "Oh my God, we can't believe you said that!" But it was reauthorized like 9 months later, a federal bill. And so that was such a huge thing, because sometimes you feel like you go to all those day on the hill things and like nothing happens.
Right.
So for that to happen, I mean, and I wasn't the only one, right? I don't, I might have been like, a small piece of all the people advocating for that. But that was a huge thing to be a part of federal legislation to gets moved ahead. And I just, that is so huge, because that just did so much for so many families across the nation. And so those are some big pieces for sure that I would say that I've been a part of and enjoy. It was another part of that question.
So it was what kinds of impacts, and then what are you why are you so passionate about serving and guiding young women of color?
I had very few positive role models, especially living in Iowa because it's predominantly white. But the women that I did meet, they were advocates. They were social workers. They were folks who were out there in the community speaking up, not afraid, saying, "Yeah, I hear you, but this, I hear you, and this." And I was just always so mesmerized by it. And I just think over time, it's just something that just kind of sat in my soul, is like, how can I also be a voice? And so it's like working with other women and working with other girls of color, particularly Black girls. It's like, we can be literally whatever we want. Are we gonna have some trials? Is it gonna be hard sometimes? Child, yes. It ain't always pretty. I said, being vocal, that means there's some people that don't want to hear me.
And some
And but
people
still
who will come
pushing
after
through.
you because you did
Oh,
voice.
child, yes.
Right.
They got something to say. And I always go, baby, you don't pay my bills. Okay. So, you know, we're just kind of working with people in that way, and just giving those girls space and a voice. And you kind of almost turn into like an auntie, big sister to a lot of women. And because it's like, if that's who you are, if that's who your personality is, sometimes people need that, and you become a part of that. And I've been that for so many girls and women that I don't even, it allows me to have a family everywhere.
Right.
Instead of just being confined to my bloodline, I have family everywhere. And I can go to almost any city and be like, "Hey, I'm going to be in town," and I can have lunch with someone. I'm never alone, because I have invested so much time with so many women and girls. Like, even if they're 19 now, but I had, they were a kid of mine at 14 and 13. They'd be like, "Oh, Miss Tasha, come on by. I want you to see my baby," I'm like, okay. I feel like I got 900 grandchildren, because now a lot of the girls that I used to work with are now like moms, and I'm running to them in the grocery store. Hold my baby. I'm like, okay, let me put my milk down. Taking pictures. So I learned to be a little bit more picture ready, because I'm constantly running into people who are like, so I love that, right? They're like, "Oh my gosh, I got mama, this the lady, this Miss Tasha." I'm like, "Hey." So met a lot of mamas. It's harder now that I have a little girl. And I see some of those behaviors. Not I see it as a mom now. I don't see it as a practitioner that wants to intervene and maybe provide services. Now I see it as your daughter keep playing with my daughter like she been playing with her. We're gonna have a whole other conversation. You don't know that me. You don't know that me. So, that's a little harder because I see the girl and the girls that are being mean to my own child are the girls that I would normally work with. And so now it's like, but I will put this John, like don't make me have to bust out this Jimmy Choo on you.
Right.
So it's kind of
Right.
a thing. So it's tough. It's tough to have that balance.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about that? Because like I've always felt I think because of the way that I was raised and but the mannerisms I have, that has put me at very interesting places. And then
Mm,
having my three boys and trying to raise them in Iowa and get them through a system that is not necessarily very responsive to really intelligent, capable Black children,
mm-hmm,
and also being in the school system, we're trying to work with kids, trying to advocate for kids who then didn't necessarily know which side of the fence I was on. Can you talk about
mm.
that tension a little bit more? Because I don't think we pay enough attention to that, especially as
Yeah.
Black, Black folks who are doing this work, but not necessarily, and parenting and doing, you're doing this work for your kids and you're trying to do this work for other people's kids. And then sometimes that gets kind of twisted.
Yeah, it's difficult. I would say, oh man, I would say that some of the difficulty is in how we define blackness or how blackness is defined for us.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's a huge part of it. It's not the only part, but it's a big part of it because coming as a black woman with multiple degrees and all this education and all this stuff, sometimes when I'm working with families, there's a power dynamic for sure, right? Because I'm coming in and I'm a
Right.
helper practitioner. And but I have to be able to buy cultural broker, right? Where I have to be able to say, look, let's put all my degrees over there. That was paperwork I had to do to be able to get the job I got, right? And like let's get down to brass tacks. But
Right.
sometimes people can't hear you because how you may present yourself. And like when you're navigating as a parent and you're navigating in that world, like you have to learn how to speak kind of in all these different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have you have to be on a lot, but you got to be on in different ways. So it's really tricky
And
because
emotional.
like when I want to go cuss the teacher out because that's what my soul says, I have to do some critical thinking about, so what is this going to look like for my child after I leave this space, right? So you know what I'm saying? I have to count up the cost. That's what the church people say. You got to count up the cost of these different advocacies, right? So like now I'm in a place where I'm like, I didn't pop off on the high school principal so many times. I got to send my kids across town because I just don't think they're gonna get the same fair treatment because he don't want to deal with me. I don't want to deal with him. So it is difficult. It's difficult. Those you have to kind of count it up like, okay, I gotta think long term here. Cause if
Yep.
I cuss you out now and it's August and my kid gotta be here till June, I better, hmm, I better think this through, right?
Right, right.
And it's tough because so what I have learned to do is I've learned to not respond right away. Um, I learned to give myself a day or two, sometimes 3 days,
Mm-hmm.
and then I try to respond. Sometimes I have to write a couple drafts. Okay. You ever wrote what you really want to say? And you're like, I probably shouldn't send that. What I've also learned is never put anybody's name in the two when you're venting. Okay.
Right.
So just in case you push send, it don't go nowhere. It don't go nowhere.
Right.
It goes nowhere. Or I put my own name. So then
Right.
I read it and I go, oh, damn, you definitely can't send this out, sis. It's full of tone. I used to get in trouble for tone all the time. But I have a tendency to write with tone. So I'm like, let me tone it down. But it's difficult because you want to, you know what needs to be done. You know what will get you the fastest results. But when it comes to your child, it's not the same as if I was advocating for somebody else because my cost is higher.
Right.
It's much higher, and it's difficult though.
Absolutely.
Because trust me, I've had a couple times the last couple years wanted to be like, so let me tell you where you can really go. But I was like, and then I also have to be cautious about how I deal with my anger around my children so that they can learn some different coping skills. Because if I'm just cussing out and acting a fool, and then I go to the school and I'm like, you know, they, especially if there's no explanation, they're going to come up with their own interpretation.
Right.
And I teach, classes on cultural competence, and I'm like, your parents might have intended this. They might, this is their intentionality, but the impact that you receive, what you understood, is completely different.
Right.
Double messaging, right? Miscommunication there. And so I have to walk into my room while they go to sleep and go, I don't care. And then I write a nice email and go, hey, I heard there were some problems. I want to know how we can work on them. I want to
Right.
work with you as a part of a team.
Right. Like building that community.
Yes,
Right.
you got to use the right words, with them, and they go, oh, this is a team
Absolutely.
player.
Right. So you had mentioned joy before. What
Oh
is your
yeah.
joy journey? And how would you advise young women to navigate the waters, sometimes rough, sometimes smooth, sometimes cold,
Mm.
sometimes warm, for themselves?
The warm is hard because when it's warm, warm water is not your friend. Things leak. Um, I think, joy. I was telling somebody the other day about this. I said, next time I do this, I want to do a happiness journey because I feel like that would be easier. Joy is tough. Joy is so tough. I think I was telling you that. Joy is tough because it is tangible. But it's deeper than happiness. Happiness is very surface level. Oh, we had a good laugh and that was happiness. But joy is something that fills your cup. Joy is Happiness is like the froth. I mean, it's nice, right? It's cute. But like joy is like that actual latte, right? Like it's the actual thing in the cup that's giving you warmth, that's connecting you, that there's comfort. And for when connecting it to Black women, in particular Black women, as a Black woman, we have to create spaces for joy, especially in predominantly white spaces,
Mhm.
because our joy is looked at many times as problematic, or it's too loud, or
Yes.
it's always TOO.
Yes.
And the beautiful thing that I love about being around Black women is we create bubbles for ourselves because we understand that, whether they understand that message or not. We're not explaining ourselves to you today, sir. We're gonna do our joy, and you're gonna go over there and leave us alone, right? It's like, and then when you got like 15 women, like, they usually walk away, right? Like, it feels
Right.
threatening. It feels threatening. Like, I think they might actually, there's a couple of them in here that might actually whoop my behind, You better believe it. I'ma help. I might just only pop you once, but I'ma help. But you know what I'm saying? It's like when you schedule that joy, when you create that space. We just had like 55 Black women go to the Woman King together. It was a cultural experience within a cultural experience because the white people was there, they was not prepared. We was like, sir, we was talking back to the movie. You know how Black folks do. We think it's a call and response when we go to the movies. And for my daughter, she was like, this was the best day ever
I've
because
seen
she
it
got to
twice.
see it.
Yeah.
I have not seen it twice.
No,
I
I
think I
was
was still
actually
cut up.
I
I
was
still would cut up.
I was supposed to go to a third time this weekend, but like I saw it the weekend it came out, the Friday it came out, I saw it.
Yeah,
Then I
yeah,
saw it last weekend with another group of friends. So
yeah.
I mean, I know we didn't plan to talk about this, but I think like for me, the power of that particular movie is the fact
Yes.
that it's not only just because she's a woman and that it's black folks and it's powerful black folks, but
Mm-hmm.
it's also dealing with some of the not infighting, but the differences on, like you said, how we define blackness and what that means as it plays out in the larger world, or how the world tells us to perform blackness. And you get that
Yes.
tension in there, but it's not a tension that's self-destructive.
Right.
Most of the time, like I loved Black Panther, but there's a lot of self-destructiveness in there.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That part wasn't in this movie, which made it one of the best black movies I've ever seen, because
Mm-hmm.
you didn't have to wade through that historical representation of blackness, that we just can't get
Yes.
along, we just can't get it together, we just can't, we can't stand up for ourselves, let alone anybody else. And it gives you a different narrative saying, no, we can actually create a boundary and say we're
Yep.
not crossing that boundary. And not only not crossing that boundary, we're going to fight for it too.
Exactly. We are not going to commodify our people. We're
Right.
not doing that.
Right.
And I just, even though, like, the end is rough, right? It's powerful and rough. There's those rough pieces in there.
Yep.
It just was, man, that is a movie that I just don't think I'll ever forget. And like, going with my daughter was really huge for her to just be there and experience that. And just, I don't know, it was just so powerful. I love that about Black women. I think that's why I'm so passionate about working with Black women and girls, because it's like, we get it. It's that collective we, even if we are like in different places and different whatever. And it's like, even if we don't always get along, if we're in that same space together, it's like, whatever, all that, we're Black women,
Right.
right? We're Black women. And there's so many times in life when I can remember when Black women created their own bubble and just like whatever with the rest of the world. And I just, anyways, so that is some of my reasoning. I find joy in uplifting Black women because it lifts me up too.
Mhm.
I find joy in it. Joy is hard. Joy is, sometimes there are really tough decisions you have to make when you want to get to joy.
Mhm.
And I have definitely had to make some hard decisions, but after those decisions, you can feel almost joy leap up in your heart.
Right.
It's a powerful feeling. It really is. It's kind of addicting in some ways, because you're like, how do I get back to that? But you forget, like, the road is rough and long, and you're like, but it's worth it. It's worth it, because I feel like every time I experience joy, it brings a youthfulness back into my life. It gives me, more strength to make it, kind of thing. And so it's a very interesting journey to go on. This is my fourth year. And my life has changed dramatically in 4 years, doing this joy journey. So I hope people come along with me, or they have their own version of a joy journey to joy. I don't know. I'm thinking about writing a book about it, because every year I pick a new theme, and these are like chapters basically. So yeah.
So how would you describe where you are in your joy journey right now, today?
Oh, today my joy journey is, so this year was about letting someone love me, while I love myself. And what I found is I have to let myself love me.
Mhm.
And I keep running into people, into situations where people are like, yeah, but you're not, if you don't put yourself first,
Mhm.
it's hard for me to love you if you ain't loving you. And
Right.
just the small things like taking a swim class, or investing in my music career, or investing more on the music side of my brain, like the creative side of my brain, um bring some balance. I've been so academic focused for a really, really long time, and like even in my work, very research based,
Mhm.
evidence
Right.
based. And so to like lean into, what I'm learning is that lack of confidence and not trusting yourself are the same.
Yes.
And I learned that today. And that I really, I have everything that I need, but if I don't push outside, if I don't have fun and I don't get to the part where I'm just not caring what other people are going to think, I'm never going to truly be able to experience what it really means to be a musician. And that is where I am in my joy journey, is getting to the place where I'm just having fun. I can't worry about what other people think about if I crack a note or not, if I don't do blah 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 or not. You know what I'm saying? And so, because I like I said, my brain is more technical. Like I always say, the difference between me is like people is like cooking and baking. Like cooking is like an artistic thing that people do. Baking is instructions, right? It's like, yes, half a cup of this, half a cup of that, you know. Whereas if people are cooking, they're just throwing seasons in there and hoping it work out. I'm like, I can't do all this. This is crazy. So I'm a baker, right? I'm a baker with life, but but I realize that my baking part of my brain, which is, great, it's also a trauma response. And so it's like, what is it to
Yeah,
lean into?
yeah,
What is it to lean into that creative side that is free? That's
yeah,
freedom.
yeah. It sounds like it's so funny. You and I are in the same place. Without going into a lot of detail, but like I find myself really trying to lean in that more creative side that's always been there, that I've always wanted to nurture, but never gave myself the ability or the time or the energy, or like you said, the confidence and the self-trust to do it.
Yes.
And this is probably the first year of my life that I've actively started doing some.
Yes. And it makes such a huge difference, right? I don't know. I am leaning into this part of me. I hate the fact that I had to wait to like my 40s to like get over myself. But like whatever. I'm still here. I'm still alive, and I am going to enjoy um enjoy this part of my life. Everybody don't have to like it. Nobody has to like LaTasha Lala, the performer. So yeah, it's just yeah. But I like I said, I am enjoying where I am. There, I have some other goals that I want to do and get to, but I'm enjoying where I am right now. Where I am right now is bringing the right people in my life to help me get through this point so I can get to my joy. So
Absolutely.
joy's coming.
So in your years on the planet and in the work you've done, what's been some of the most impactful experiences you've had, which have led to where you are today?
Oh man, impactful experiences. When it comes to the racial justice piece, actually being in town and witnessing an actual Klan rally in my when I was young, I might have been 10, um, was a huge thing because I could like, obviously we were told to stay in the house and not leave, but we lived in an apartment downtown and the rally was about 3 blocks from our house. So you could see all the people, motorcycle gangs and different people that are part of this um going over there because they have to basically come by my house. And so um, and we had this window. Our apartment stuck out for some reason. It's a historic building, but it had a side window where you can definitely see a couple blocks down. So that was a huge one because it was like, this isn't right.
Right.
This isn't right. I think another thing was you said influential moments.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Impactful moments.
Impactful moments was really honestly growing up, and I grew up in a household that had a lot of domestic violence.
Hmm.
And eventually my dad was imprisoned here in the area that I currently live. So actually moving here to a new city allowed me to have more experiences with more folks of color, which I didn't have as many. Obviously, where I lived before was there's predominantly white, and then there's really predominantly white. And I lived in really predominantly white, and then we moved to predominantly white and got to meet more folks of color. And I remember this person when I first got there. I remember she used to kind of say this statement to me. It's a statement I don't think I'll ever forget. She was like, "Oh, I remember when you moved here, that's when you thought you were white." And after all the things I had experienced and all the things I had seen
Hmm.
and everything, like for an adult to say that to a child is like, one, that's not appropriate, but two, like that's painful for you to say that about me because I lived through an experience that I had no choice but to know I was Black. So
Right.
for you to try to diminish my Blackness according to what your specific version of what Blackness looks like, that was an impactful moment for me because I was like, wow, like, that was that thing within us, within our own group, that there's still anti-Blackness because we feel like that we have to say Black is performed in a certain way, right? And I think those were some of them. Probably exiting from like religious institutions was a huge change and shift in my life.
You said
Um,
exiting?
Exiting, yeah, like leaving religious institution was very huge for me, making that choice after a whole lifetime. And I don't know, having babies.
I knew you were gonna say that.
I just,
It's a
how
game
could you
changer.
not?
Right.
It's life changing. I think I notice my kids the most when I'm in my room because when they were born, I had a tree that was pretty much like brand new, and
Mhm.
it was like below the window, and now it's like almost tall as my house, and so it's like, dang, because they're growing that fast too,
Yep.
and that is so huge because they have their own fan base. They have like the Deloach twins, right? Like they have their own fan base and people who are like constantly keeping up with them. Some people have never met them, but you would swear the way that people talk about them that they like hung out with them at some point. I was like, have you ever even met them before, like real life? But like, I tell these stories
Right.
on social media, so like people feel like they actually know them.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, no,
Yeah, like
I'm like, to experience them is a whole thing. Trust me, they're quite precocious. But yeah, so it's just like they became their own thing, and people used to weird me out. Motherhood was weird because one, first of all, I was pregnant with twins, so people were always trying to touch my stomach.
yes.
Um, that part.
It
But
becomes
then,
public property.
yes, but when they were born, like people's obsession with them was weird. Like they would, because they were little, they were preemies, but like when they were really cute little babies, and so but like people would be like, "Can I take a picture of them?" I'm like, "I don't even know you. Why would you take a picture of my kids?" Like in grocery store, like it was to the point where it was like weird to go outside. Like one time this lady was cutting her grass and was on the phone. And I heard her talking about, oh, girl, some twins, blah, blah, blah. She literally stopped cutting her grass, stayed on her phone, and came over and stopped in front of our stroller so she could see the kids. I was like, what? What's happening? So, like, it was weird. Having twins was weird because, like, people, you kind of feel like a circus freak a little bit because people, like, think that they have the right to, like, because it's not something you see every day, that they feel like they have the right to impose. So that experience with having not just having them, but the experience of having twins has been an interesting experience
I'm
as
sure.
well. So
I'm
yeah, those are probably my biggest. There's other pieces. People passing away, people being born. Those are all things that definitely change your how you see how your journey looks.
Mhm.
Yeah, those are definitely the big ones.
So I'm calling this episode A Place in the World. How do you develop a place for yourself in this world, particularly in these times? And what advice would you give to others?
Um, you know, I think if we stop having a deficit mindset about place
Mm-hmm.
and realize that you can create your own space, you
Mm-hmm.
can create your own place. People be like, oh, bring a folding chair to the table. Bump that. I'll bring my own card table. I'm gonna bring my own chairs. You join my group, okay? Because like obviously that group is well established, but it ain't doing nothing. So we gonna create this other thing over here instead of being like, but let's infuse them. I'm not about to do white supremacist tactics. I'm not doing that. because you want me to infuse with you because you realize there's a power shift and it's pulling some shift away from what you're doing. So you find your own place and you plant your feet and you do that. And I think that is kind of my perspective is like you live life to the fullest. We life is short. If you really think about it in regards to the history of like life itself in the world, life is really short. And all the medications and all the technology in the world, eventually you're gonna get up out of here. So live your life, you know. And I mean, that's my advice to other folks would be like, live your life. There's gonna be ups and downs. It's gonna be some tough time. I always think about the life of an entrepreneur. We should live more like entrepreneurs because they're like, if I don't work today, ain't gonna be no money tomorrow, you know. But like not in that kind of way. I follow the NAP ministry, and the biggest philosophy that they have is rest is resistance. And but it doesn't mean sometimes it is lay down, but sometimes it means to me it means anyways, lay down in that thing that is empowering and comforting to you, not for work purposes, but to lay down in this thing that is relaxing. And so that's kind of where I am with finding my place. Is I am my place. I am my own territory, and I can enlarge it or shrink it. Just move out the way. I'm a big mama. Come
And let
through.
me be.
And if I got the babies, we extra boulders. We gonna make a pathway. We'll make a pathway through.
If there was one book that you would recommend someone on the kind of journey that you're on right now, what would that be? Because of course, I had to go back to the scholarly side.
Of course. Actually, there was a new book that just came out. It's called My Life in the Sunshine by
Mhm.
Nabil Ayers.
Mhm.
He's if you know the song My Life, My Life, My Life, My Life in the Sunshine, that's his dad.
Okay.
And he just tells us it's just a really well written book.
Mhm.
And he's talking about he's talking about his life. But what I love about it is that it redefines blackness.
Mm.
And because he ended up being like this drummer of like kind of not rock bands, but kind of rock. It's like this black guy playing like in a rock band, but like
Right.
he's telling this story of having this famous dad. And but it just flows so well. It's on Audible as well as you can purchase the book. It just came out, I think, not too long ago, and it's just a really great book to talk about someone being like, against all odds, I'm going to live my life, and I might have angst, but I'm making these different choices because these are things that I'm in pursuit of. And so he talks about the angst, but it doesn't get so bad on the angst side of it that you don't see him succeeding. And it's not like I'm going to push through. You know how we have to have like the black struggle books? It's not a black struggle book in that way. It's struggle, right? Because every story has that. But this is the kind of story where it's more like
It's
I'm
more
I'm pressing through.
it sounds like it's more humanistically oriented than
Yes.
racially oriented. And
Yeah,
that's
it
what's
has
like,
both.
yeah, but
Mhm,
I think that we get caught in this notion that we have to live in that particular space all the time,
mhm.
that we short side ourselves and creating bigger and more flourishing spaces
Yeah.
because we go, oh well, that space is somebody else's. We can't do that. That's not
Mhm.
for me. You know.
Yeah, no, no, no. Yeah, the beautiful thing the reason why I lean into like the music side of me is music has no color.
Right.
And music has all the colors, I would say.
It's
Um,
one of the
you
most
know,
humanistic things that we do.
yeah, yeah, and everybody loves music. My music may not be for you, but you love some type of music. I don't care if
Right.
it's freaking Barney. You love some type of music. And so you find the thing that works for you that lifts your mood or speaks to you where you are, or where you are in your journey. You can find songs. There are songs, there's songs. People say that they're a playlist to your life.
Yes.
And there are songs along the way that you hear that song, you're like, oh, That's when I met Johnny. Oh, child, he was so fine. You know, it's just kind of there's like certain things that just bring that memory right to the forefront. And I love that because I got to hear him speak, and he said the way I wrote my book is I went back and I listened to the music that was happening at that time, and then it was easy for me to tell my story because it
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's just
That
powerful.
that was the way I did my master's thesis, which was a memoir.
Mm,
And all
see,
the chapter, each chapter was a line from a song.
see, that's beautiful. Music plays such huge, important parts. And someone a long time ago there said, "We need your voice out there," and I was like, "Out where? Where it's going?" You know. But it's just like everyone tells their story differently. And as a songwriter, I'm telling a story. It might sound like your story, because we're just connected as human beings,
Right,
and so that's how music is, whether that's you listen to more of a classical or jazz where it's just mostly just musicians, but they still tell a story. There's always a lead, there's
right.
always somebody that is telling it, is there's some story behind it, right? So um yeah.
Well, Latasha, I want to thank you for sharing just a little bit of your time and your
Sure.
with me. I really appreciate it. Um, this has been
Thanks
another
for
episode.
the invitation.
What?
I said thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. This has been another episode of Uncommon Voices, Uncommon Visions, and I'm your host, Dr. Valerie Nyberg. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to like, share, or comment on this episode. Thank you so much, and bye bye.
Bye.